Is it true that from Russia you can see America not on a map, but simply by looking across the strait, and that between two islands there are only a few kilometers, yet almost a whole day of time difference? Chukotka shatters familiar ideas from the very first minutes. This is Russia's easternmost region. Fewer than 50,000 people live here, yet its area is larger than France and Germany combined. The nearest neighboring town can sometimes be 1,000 kilometers away, with no roads at all. Winter stretches on for up to 10 months. In many places, ice remains for 8 months of the year, but Chukotka is not deserted. Quite the opposite. It is one of the most life-filled places in the Arctic. There are especially many gray whales, walruses, and polar bears here, and there are also ancient structures whose purpose is still unclear. To begin with, here is a fact that changes everything. Russia and America here are not separated by an ocean thousands of kilometers wide. There are only 3 kilometers and 800 meters of water between them. In the middle of the Bering Strait lie 2 islands, Russia's Ratmanov Island and America's Krusenstern Island. In clear weather, one can be seen from the other. But these few kilometers divide more than just countries. Suspenseful, the international dateline runs between the islands. On one shore it is already tomorrow. On the other it is still yesterday. The time difference reaches 21 hours. It is no wonder the locals nicknamed them simply Yesterday Island and Tomorrow Island. For the Eskimos, this is an especially painful story. For thousands of years, people lived on both sides of the strait and freely visited one another. Everything changed after Alaska passed to the United States of America in 1867. The border cut the familiar world in two, right across the water. Families ended up on opposite sides. Later, special visa-free travel was introduced for local residents. This happened at the end of the 20th century. But almost no Eskimos remained on the Russian island. The military took it over. And so, in the end, a few kilometers of water turned into a border between relatives, countries, and even calendar days. Whispering, and now the most astonishing part. Beneath the waters of the strait lies not just the seabed. A flooded landmass is hidden there, one that people and animals once crossed. About 20,000 years ago, there was no strait here. The ocean level was about 130 meters lower. Between Asia and America stretched a vast land up to 1,500 kilometers wide. Scientists call it Beringia. It was not a narrow isthmus, but an entire continental bridge. Mammoths, ancient horses, woolly rhinoceroses, and even camels roamed across it. Yes, camels once lived in the north too. It was across this land that the first people reached America from Asia. The indigenous peoples of both Americas descended from them. Then the climate warmed. The ice began to melt. The water rose slowly, but without stopping. About 11,000 years ago, Beringia disappeared beneath the water. Those who remained on one side continued living in Asia. Those who ended up on the other became the ancestors of the peoples of the Americas. Today, the Bering Strait is in places only about 36 meters deep. That means this drowned world lies very close, just under the water. Scientists have found traces of marsh plants in bottom sediments, and even ancient mammoth DNA. This is important. It means Beringia was not a dry, rocky plain, but a vast wet landscape with rivers, lakes, and marshes. In essence, beneath the modern strait lies a true lost continent. By the way, if details like these interest you, subscribe to the channel. Here we explore places where history turns out to be far stranger than the usual textbooks suggest. On Bering Island, there is another mystery. There stands Whalebone Alley. It is one of the strangest structures in the entire Arctic. Along the shore, enormous bowhead whale bones are planted into the ground for hundreds of meters. The skulls reach about 2 meters in width. Jawbones rise to heights of up to 5 meters. Between them are dozens of stone storage pits. and at the end, there is a circular placetka made of stones. Serious in total. The remains of at least 50 or 60 whales were used in this complex. It was built by the Eskimos around the 14th century, and to this day, no one knows exactly why. There are several theories. Some believe it was a sanctuary for whalers and a place for rituals. Others speak of competitions between shamans. There is also a third version. Perhaps it was a special storehouse accessible only to the chosen few. But no hypothesis has been conclusively proven. Even local legends do not give a clear answer. The most amazing thing about the discovery of this place is that it was found by accident. In 1977, a Soviet vessel was passing by in the fog. The fog lifted, and the people on board saw white bones sticking vertically out of the ground. That was how the ancient complex returned to the field of view of science. Nearby, there had once been the settlement of Sikliuk. Later, its residents left. The alley remained standing by the sea, as if on its own, without explanations and without witnesses. Even deeper in the center of Chukotka lies Lake Eljigitkin. Its name is translated as the Lake of Non-Melting Ice, and that is no exaggeration. Ice here can last until July. Sometimes it does not disappear completely. The lake is almost perfectly round. Its diameter is about 12 kilometers. From above, it really does look like a blue eye amid a stony emptiness. Why is its shape so even? Because it is a crater. About 3.5 million years ago, a meteorite fell here. That is how one of the most unusual lakes on the planet came into being. This region was not later covered by continental glaciers. Because of that, a continuous layer of sediments from millions of years has been preserved at the bottom. For scientists, this is the rarest kind of archive of Earth's climate. These layers can be read as a history of cooling and warming with almost no interruptions, but the lake has another reputation as well. Local people say that a creature named Kalilgu lives in its waters. The lake is home to fish species found nowhere else on Earth. They have adapted to the cold, the darkness, and the isolation. Scientists allow that other relict organisms may also be hidden in the deep layers. And stories about a monster are fed by strange surges on the surface. They can be explained by gas emissions. But the locals are in no hurry to agree with that version. For them, this place has long been surrounded by an ominous reputation. It is no accident that the first explorers called it eerie and oppressive. And finally, there is an island where the past lingered longer than anywhere else. This is Wrangel Island. It lies between the Chukchi and East Siberian Seas. The 180th meridian passes through it. That means the east and west of the planet literally meet here. But the island's main mystery is not in its geography. Mammoths lived here when in other places they had long since disappeared. On the mainland, mammoths vanished about 12,000 years ago. But on Wrangel Island, they survived until about 3,500 years ago. This means that when the pyramids were already standing in Egypt, the last mammoths were still walking on this Arctic island. They were smaller than their ancient ancestors. Their population had become too small. By estimates, only about 300 animals remained. That proved insufficient for long-term survival. Today, Wrangel Island is famous for something else. It is one of the world's most important breeding centers for polar bears. Every winter, hundreds of female bears come here to make dens and give birth to cubs. The concentration here is exceptional. Bears use the abandoned houses of former settlements as shelters. They go inside, break furniture, and lie down right on the old beds. It is no wonder the island has the Chukchi name Umquilin, meaning the island of polar bears. And at Cape Desnev, at the easternmost point of Eurasia, there stands another place with a heavy memory. This is the abandoned settlement of Naukan. Eskimos lived here long ago. There were 13 clans. They had their own dialect, much closer to the languages of Alaska than to Chukchi speech. and that is no accident. The inhabitants themselves preserved legends that their ancestors had come from the American side. Linguists see in this confirmation of ancient ties across the strait, which today seems like a border, but was once a road. In 1958, Naukan was closed in just 3 days. 400 people were loaded onto barges and taken away. Officially, the explanation was simple. Supplying the settlement was too difficult. But the real reason was different. America was too close. Contacts with relatives in Alaska were too frequent. For the Cold War era, that was enough. Today, all that remains there are the ruins of Yarangas, the wind, and whale jaws driven into the ground. Once, boats were dried and hung on them. Sometimes border guards come here. They maintain the lighthouses and navigation points. Occasionally, rare tourists make it this far. After all, this is the edge of Eurasia. From here, in clear weather, you can see the coast of Alaska. There are only 86 kilometers between them. Almost next door, Fevik is completely different. It is the northernmost city in Russia. About 4,000 people live here. An unusual vessel stands in the port year-round. It is the floating nuclear thermal power plant Akademik Lomonosov. The first, and so far, the only station of its kind in the world. It is moored at the shore and provides the city with electricity and heat. The first power came online in December 2019. Symbolically, it was used to light the city's New Year tree, but Pevik's main force is not in its reactors. It is in the wind. The Yuzhak here is not just bad weather. It is a local ordeal. The pressure drops quickly, and almost every home has a barometer. People know the rule. If the needle starts falling, there is little time. You need to pick up the children, get home, and take shelter. The Yuzhak reaches speeds of 80 meters per second. That is stronger than many hurricanes. At such times, people do not walk the streets. They crawl, clinging to poles and railings. Empty barrels fly down the road like paper. The snow is blown away down to bare ice, and then everything goes quiet, and the city stands there, strangely clean. No trash, no loose snow, only icy asphalt and silence. And yet Pevek knows how to surprise. In summer, the tundra around it is covered with daisies. The short season does not last long, but the contrast is almost unbelievable. Just recently, there was a wind that could knock you off your feet. And now there are flowers to the horizon. By the way, if details like these interest you, subscribe to the channel. Here we collect exactly these kinds of stories about places where nature and history are constantly arguing with each other. Off the coast of Chukotka, one of the largest migrations on the planet takes place every year. Gray whales feed in the Chukchi and Bering Seas in summer. They plow the seabed with their snouts and filter out small bottom-dwelling crustaceans. In autumn, the ice begins to advance. Then the whales turn around and head south. Their route stretches along the Pacific coast to the lagoons of California and Mexico. There they give birth. Then they return. The full circuit is about 24,000 kilometers. This is the longest migration among mammals. The Eskimos of Naukan had their own explanation. They believed the whales did not come here by chance. It was as if they chose these very shores. That is why they were welcomed not as prey, but as important guests, with rituals, with gratitude. With the memory of an ancient alliance between man and sea, today, industrial hunting of gray whales is prohibited. But an exception was made for the indigenous peoples of Chukotka. They are allowed to take a limited number of animals for their own needs. This is not hunting for the market. It is part of a traditional way of life. The hunt has changed, but not completely. Now there is a motorboat, but the harpoon itself is still thrown by hand. The principle is the same as it was many centuries ago. Providenia Bay got its name in the 19th century. At that time, the search was underway for John Franklin's lost expedition. Ships sheltered here from Arctic storms. The place proved so convenient that sailors considered it almost a happy providence. That is how the name stuck. Later, the bay became an important port in the eastern Arctic, a true gateway to the icy ocean. The shores here are harsh. Stone walls rise hundreds of meters. The fjord itself stretches for about 34 kilometers. It narrows toward the interior. The cliffs draw closer. The space becomes tighter and more powerful. In summer, gray and humpback whales feed in Diomede Strait. They can often be seen right from the shore. Walruses lie nearby. Seabird colonies roar on the cliffs. For Chukotka, this is one of the key places. Not just a beautiful bay, but a real entrance to the region. And all of this takes place on permafrost. The ground here is frozen to depths of hundreds of meters. Almost everything depends on that. How houses are built, how pipes are laid, what can grow at all. And then, in the middle of this icy logic, boiling water rises from the earth. In the east of the peninsula lie the Chaplino thermal springs. The water there heats up to almost 88 degrees. All around are snow, tundra, and frozen soil, and steam rises above the springs. The earth in this valley is warm. At a depth of about 6 meters, it stays at around plus 24 degrees Celsius. That is why there is no permafrost here. For Chukotka, this is almost a natural miracle. Nature immediately took advantage of this chance. Hundreds of plant species grow in the valley. For the Arctic, that is rare. Ferns, mosses, and algae can be found here in the hot channels. In Soviet times, people quickly understood what this meant. Greenhouses were built near the springs. Right in the tundra, they grew cucumbers, tomatoes, greens, and even flowers. Hot water was sent through pipes for heating. Then came the hard 90s. The enterprise was abandoned. But the springs themselves remained. Steam still rises into the icy air. There are also the Larino Springs. They are located not far from Larino. The water there is milder in temperature, and locals come to bathe. The scene is almost unreal. In winter it is minus 30 all around, and in the open pool it is about plus 40. Thick steam hangs above the water. All around are white tundra and hills. Cape Desnev is the easternmost point of Eurasia. A rocky cliff drops straight into the sea. Behind you is a gigantic landmass. Ahead is a narrow strip of water. And beyond that is Alaska. It is here that you feel the scale of the Bering Strait especially clearly. It separates not just two shores. It divides two states, two time zones, and seemingly two neighboring days. At the cape stands a lighthouse monument. Below, a path leads down to abandoned Naukan. In clear weather, from this point you can see the Diomede Islands, and beyond them is already the American shore. Another country is visible not on a map, but with your own eyes, and that is the main meaning of Chukotka. Here the border is felt almost physically. Here it is especially easy to understand that once this border did not exist at all. The ancestors of the local peoples crossed these spaces long before states and border lines. Along these northern roads, humanity once reached a new continent. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you again soon.